Hey everybody, welcome to Hear Us Out. I am Patrick.
And I'm Paul. How's it going?
Pretty good, my friend, other than a bout of COVID, but we're going to move on very quickly from that. But sympathy is very much appreciated in the comments down below. So, what are we doing? We're talking a new Lord of the Rings movie. And I don't mean a new Lord of the Rings book. I don't mean somebody's coming up with a whole new trilogy based on some existing works. We're talking Warner Brothers announcing, yes, we're going to go ahead and create new movies from the materials that we have licensing agreements for. So that means we're getting something in the Hobbit, Lord of the Rings universe. Paul, I know Lord of the Rings fans will be excited about this idea. What was your first thought?
I was kind of first of all, I was kind of excited because of the new Lord of the Rings movie set, which is I'm always happy for more kind of Lord of the Rings. The only problem is that although I'm a fan of the Hobbit films, they're not as good to me as the original trilogy, and the Rings of Power TV show on Prime hasn't been really kind of hitting the mark. So I'm optimistically cautious in this kind of endeavor, kind of thing. Like it has all the hallmarks of what could possibly be a good kind of series of movies. Having some of the original kind of, I guess, creators and developers from the original trilogy on board, kind of thing.
Actually, yeah. So let's maybe give a quick info dump to people. How's this all come to pass? Well, today, David Zaslav, CEO of WarnerDiscovery, said on the first quarter earnings call, "Hey, guess what? You're getting some new Lord of the Rings, and guess what? Or even more, you're getting new Lord of the Rings." That's going to have some of the original creators or a lot of the original creators involved. And when I say original creators, I don't mean they've reanimated JRR Tolkien. I mean Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and Phillipa Boyer. So I think it's kind of cool. Everybody, and I'm with you, Paul. The Hobbit movies, and I'll throw them back up on screen. The Hobbit movies, I'm very harsh on them compared to you. You're a conscientious objector or whatever. You're somebody who's fairly saying could have been better. Me, I'm like, oh yeah. God, why did they do it? Whereas the original Lord of the Rings, what Peter Jackson and Fran and co did was incredible. I still think 20 years later, however long it's been, they're incredible. I still watch I have my DVD box sets like everybody else. All good nerds have the extended editions. I love doing a rewatch of the extended cuts of Lord of the Rings. And I mean all three movies, which is a good way to spend an entire weekend. But the announcement that they're going to be involved, and the way it was put, was they'll be involved at every step of the way. For me, as if they're creative producers in that way, my excitement went through the roof. Without them, it would be, like you mentioned a moment ago, Rings of Power. Rings of Power on Amazon has had nothing to do with Peter Jackson and the others. And for me, that showed, and it showed so much that I haven't watched a whole lot more of it. I tried, Paul, and I just couldn't. Did you stick with it at all?
Yeah, no, I did. Which was, I was not surprised about the reveals in the movie and stuff like that. Obviously some changes and stuff. It's nice to see some dwarves again. But yeah, it's all right. It's like very middle ground, kind of like, if you wanted more material to watch from the Lord of the Rings, kind of from Middle Earth and stuff like that, then yeah, it's all right. It's not great, it's all right.
Which is not the way to go about it. If the strongest thing someone can say for your show is, well, if you want more content in this area, here's more content. It's not an excited endorsement. Which again, Rings of Power we can put to the side because this is back in our good old happy trilogy days. So it's not the Hobbit trilogy necessarily. Let's hope. Let's hope it's closer to the Lord of the Rings. But what we do know is that it's going to be titled. It's got a work. I shouldn't say that. It's got a working title of Lord of the Rings: The Hunt for Gollum. So that means one thing and one thing only. Good old Andy Serkis Good old Andy Serkis in his mocap suit will be doing all sorts of wonderful double speak. He'll be recapturing, I'm sure, plenty of talking out both sides of his face. And that excites me.
Yeah, it's good to have Andy Serkis back, because he delved so far into the character and all the materials and everything like that in the kind of like books and all the behind material that Tolkien wrote about the character. So it's good to kind of have someone with an insight into that character's kind of way, and also like he is the only person who was capable of bringing Gollum to the screen, kind of thing. So it's great to have him return in that kind of regard. And if the movie is as as the working title may suggest, mostly about Gollum himself, it's good to have him return, which is so that we have like Gollum himself essentially on screen and there to be able to give kind of feedback on what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting to have him, because I don't know if it's going to also, because it could be as far back as when Smeagol got the ring at the start. Like, the timeline could be very different. Like, suggesting Gollum would mean that it's probably between The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogies. But we could get, a origin story of Gollum kind of thing, of Smeagol and Gollum kind of thing.
Well, that's the thing, Paul. I'm kind of hoping, and this news is fresh off the press, but there's already speculation because it's of what it's called, The Hunt for Gollum. Yes, it's going to happen. Movie-wise, it'll likely be set between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings Fellowship, the first movie. So it's probably going to happen in that area to not mess with anything. That does add one downside to it all. That means that technically it's a prequel-ish, depending on how you look at it, which can get complicated because you can't mess up anything that comes next.
Yeah.
However, I think there's a good chance, and specifically because the other piece of news that's come with this is that Andy Serkis is getting to direct. So they've tapped him to direct for this first one, and I assume that means they've kind of gone to him and said, will you come back and play Gollum? And he's probably said, I will. But you know what else? I direct movies now. If you want your Andy Serkis Gollum, maybe you want your Andy Serkis director. He's not being confirmed as director for all of the next projects, because there could be 1, 2, maybe 3 movies.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's doing this one, the fact that it could have Gollum in the title and that they'd even give a working title with it, it could even be told from Gollum's perspective. Like, this could be a literal Gollum movie, because that way the other characters that they have to show and talk about, it can be done through the lens of Gollum. So you could, like you say, you could have his whole backstory as him thinking about his childhood, thinking about Smeagol, thinking about everything that brought him to the point where we meet the character, and then the context of the adventure that it goes on. So I'm really excited at the idea that they could take a completely different angle on what they've done with Lord of the Rings, because there is no book to base this on. This is based on, the appendices that they have for Tolkien's work that they have the rights to. So they're kind of creating from scratch here.
Yeah, which will be very interesting. I do believe that having someone like, I'll hopefully wish for it not being between The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, just because I think it'll be a little bit more of an interesting story to have him be Gollum before kind of like Bilbo gets to meet him. But it definitely understands why this would be more than likely set in between the two trilogies. It makes it safer to do, as in we already know the first time we see Gollum in The Hobbit and the last time we see him in Lord of the Rings has already been set in stone.
Yeah.
So having essentially the middle ground where story where like it's Gollum kind of either running from orcs and stuff like that, and how he does it and all that kind of stuff, is a safer bet. But I hope that another action would be to go as an origin story kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because as you say, you could do it a lot more first person or a lot more kind of introspective.
Yes.
From the character's perspective as a origin story rather than a kind of, I guess, a gelling of two trilogy series already.
And
But no matter what, and the Serkis more than likely going to be a kick-ass job as playing Gollum and Smeagol.
yeah, which leads us to the other thing. Will he be a kick-ass director? I'm not here to bag on the guy, but what I've got on screen is, he's directed 5 or 6 movies. Some of them were, lower budget, straight to TV. His more, let's say, his bigger works have been the Legend of Mowgli or whatever it was called for Netflix, and then Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, which, Paul, we have along, if anybody's watched the channel for a while, we really liked Venom. It was one of the things that helped start off our whole channel. Can't say the same thing about Let There Be Carnage, Venom 2. It was not brilliantly executed at all. It wasn't a great movie. So I would have concerns that, yeah, he may have been able to parlay himself into this job, but I hope he gets all the support he needs to make sure. I'd be happy enough with Peter Jackson and co being involved enough and him being smart enough to collaborate that it should turn out okay.
Yeah, which is, I do think that from like Venom perspective kind of thing, I do believe that there's probably a lot of people's hands on the wheel of that movie, because that was probably one of those ones where it was just like, when Venom came out and it was a surprising kind of hit. And then it was just like, oh, we actually have something here. And then a lot of producers probably put their hand on the wheel, which could have restricted Andy Serkis in a creative kind of manner. Mowgli on Netflix, it was a decent film. I enjoyed it. Which is, it's a retelling of a story that already exists, so that's the only problem. There was no kind of like, the only creative kind of inlet there would be kind of like look and feel and specifics, but it's a majorly kind of singular plot. I did see that in the chat there. Lisa did say that, pointed out that it could have been a time when they were looking for Gollum in search of the ring, kind of thing. Yeah, it could either be that they, like, the fact is that there was no one who knew that he had it at before the Hobbit, kind of thing. But between the first, the Hobbit trilogy and the Lord of the Rings, the orcs kind of figured it out that he may have had it, and followed the thread there to Frodo and Bilbo,
and that's why, and that's exactly why that was my guess. I am exactly like you. I really hope that they take their chance if they're going to go back, which they have to, because the spoiler warning, Gollum doesn't make it. So they're going to have to go back rather than forward from Return of the King. I think, and this is me trying to remember the books, I know that Sauron was looking for him at one stage. I know that Gandalf was keeping an eye on him at one stage. Aragorn had knowledge of a ring that he was, it all leads to Gollum. Not everybody, but lots of people at one point or another had a kind of he's got information. Many, I guess, didn't realize that he had the ring at any point, but definitely knew that he was in some way linked to it. So it could be a story about him, and even just the relationship when he had the ring on to Sauron, and the idea that Sauron's hunting for him. And again, as a working title, I think the most important thing isn't the hunt; it's the fact that it says Gollum at all, because they can change that phrasing depending on what movie they end up writing and creating, and whatever they write and create. This is show business, not show friends. They're going to want to make sure that there's enough breathing room and enough story room that they can make more. They will not want this to be a one and done. They'll want to leave it open to either continue the story that they tell or leave it open to add another chapter somewhere. And I would assume that almost all of those chapters will happen before the Fellowship. So I think almost everything will have to be squeezed in before Frodo shows up.
Yeah. Like there's a lot of kind of history there that happens between the two series. So, but the exciting part is, we've got Andy Serkis back, we've got Peter Jackson and the creative team of the original trilogy coming back. So it's making me kind of nostalgic in a certain way towards kind of like I guess it's just weird because you get this kind of you hear about this and you hear about the people involved and stuff like that, and you get a nostalgia feeling of kind of hearing their names said and kind of going, oh yeah, because obviously when the Fellowship came out, it was a huge big hit,
Yeah.
kind of thing, and then their names shot to like stardom, kind of thing, and then obviously with the Two Towers and Gollum coming in more, Andy Serkis's name kind of shot to the thing. So like, it feels like a warm hug. I guess that I didn't get when the Rings of Power was announced,
Yeah.
kind of thing. It was kind of one of these things when I got the same feeling when The Hobbit was also shouted, and then obviously
Yeah.
lost a little bit when they were just like it's three movies. But yeah, I think it's three movies and a couple of books shoved into the Hobbit as well. That's my only worry is that like they start shoving kind of like the unfinished stories and untold tales and stuff like that into a lot of the stuff,
Star Trek
just to kind of make
47,
it
The
fit.
Search for More Money. Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of fit a lot of kind of like they put a lot of filler and stuff that they weren't able to like. If I swear to God, if they have Tom Bombadil in one of these films, I'm gonna be a little bit annoyed because like they should just not. As much as I love Tom, he should just not be included in any of them.
Works on the
Um,
page, doesn't like finding the book. It was one of those things that when Peter Jackson and co spent all that time created Weta, you know, made New Zealand a destination, all sorts of things, like changed a lot of the world beyond filmmaking, but especially including filmmaking. One of the things I think that was proven is if you love the material enough and you get enough people around who also all love the material, you'll know what to remove. Because sometimes I think it's harder to remove than it is to add in needlessly. And things like Tom Bombadil were removed
hmm.
for good reason. So I'm with you. If they start just going, what haven't we used, and then shoehorning it all in, that'll be an awful, awful sign. But again, the Peter Jackson of it all, the Fran of it all, like the one thing, Andy Serkis, I'm a bit worried about his directing past, let's say, but I have confidence with others. The guy, he seems like a wonderful creative, so I'm very confident that as part of group, he'll be fine. But my big thumb up to this is they said Lord of the Rings and they said Peter Jackson. And I'm like, okay, you had me at Peter Jackson. I'm ready. I'm ready to give this. I'm ready to, same as you, I'm ready to go into this like The Hobbit. Massively happy until I'm disappointed. And not the other way around, which was the Rings of Power, where I was like, I'm not so sure if I'm going to be interested. And then I wasn't.
Yeah. Like that's the worry is that like as we get more and more kind of information about the kind of the movie as it kind of more galvanizes towards some plot or the other kind of thing, it may lose traction,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Right now, it's got a lot of currency for kind of nostalgia and confidence in the creative team. But yeah, I think as we move forward closer and closer, it's going to really tell when you start hearing the production, when you start getting production photos and stuff like that about how well they're kind of what they're putting into this. Because when the production photos of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit came out, they were like, great. Okay,
Yeah.
they're really working on kind of like making it feel like this is in Middle Earth. It's another part of Middle Earth that we really haven't seen, kind of thing. The Rings of Power, it was like let's make it as kind of magical kind of background, magical as possible. That it was very kind of folk taley kind ofness of it. And then when it was like in the real world, and like I guess in kind of more practical kind of
Yeah.
scenes and stuff like that, they were just like, it's a field. And you're kind of just like, okay, you need to understand that, like, although Middle Earth is a magical place and stuff like that, making like the beauty of a background really sparkle, kind of thing is like really jarring for the character for the audience,
It's
kind of
true.
thing. Whereas like we like when the first time you see Rivendell in the Fellowship, you're just like, oh, a magical place. But you've seen such grand landscapes and everything like that that it fits
Yeah.
perfectly into it, even though it's like it's a 10 compared to the gorgeous like 8 sceneries that you've seen
Yeah.
in the Rings of Power, it was very much like, look at this 10 fantasy kind of thing, and then look at this 3 field, you know, kind of thing. And you're just like, you do understand that you're kind of making mixed messages and kind of, so that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about that as we see more and more, we get to lose a little bit of kind of faith and I guess our own kind of wonder. You know, the whole like, don't show the monster because our imaginations are way better. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about
which is why tonight's episode was almost about. Did you see? There's another new trailer for Quiet Place: The Beginning, and it's ruining it for me because now I know exactly what all of those creatures look like. I've seen 1,000 of them running around. Anyway, back to this topic. That's just pet peeve checked off. Thank you for letting me get that out. I'd like to ask the people in the comments because we're gonna end this one a little bit earlier tonight. Just if you're, and hello Kim and Lisa and everybody in the comments out there, if you can just give us a yay or a nay whether or not you're excited and you're happy that they're going back to the world of Lord of the Rings, or if you would have been happier if they just let it go now because they can do more damage than good. So give us a positive or negative thought on that. But Paul, to your point of that kind of consistency, let's say of, you know, you're at a 10 with the dreamscape and then you're at a 3 with the field that they shot some practical in. My confidence level is pretty high, and again, I'm not just going to keep throwing Peter Jackson's name in, but because Warner Brothers and everybody knows how much money a Lord of the Rings theatrically can make. Anything with Lord of the Rings, it became a theatrical franchise after being, you know, one of the greatest selling book series of all times. I think there will be enough care and consistency given. I also kind of hope that in the background, what we don't and what hasn't been announced is that they have actually got a plan for a couple of films, and they'll do what they did with Lord of the Rings, and they'll start, you know, filming things together, and maybe making a bit of a grander plan so that not only do we have one film that is consistent in its look and feel, but maybe that any of this next tranche of films are, you know, of the same look and feel, so that at least we can stay in the world. And you know, the other thing is, it's Gollum. You can do a lot. There was a whole load of battles. There's a whole lot of wars happening in Middle Earth that we haven't got to see. There were fights left, right, and center. And you know, I'm not saying that every movie has to have a Helm's Deep moment in it, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to be like, do you know what? This happened to be going on, and we're happening to be able to tell that smaller part of the story. I know from my readings over the years that there's enough else out there that they should be able to bring us some classic Lord of the Rings army action, for lack of a better. It's a childish way to say it, but I think you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I get you know, kind of an epic set piece that we got kind of in the 3 movies themselves, all kind of crescendoing towards the Return of the King. I have a question for you though, which I do hope they do, and I think they could do elements of it. They don't need to do it so grand, I guess, would be the kind of thing. They could do elements of it, because like Fellowship of the Ring, the whole battle against the Balrog and the orcs and goblins and stuff like that is incredible, and it's probably the least kind of group. Like they're like, you know, it's the smallest group kind of battles that we get, because we get Helm's Deep and then we get, you know, the Siege of Gondor. What I kind of would like to see is that we get 3 movies, but they're kind of their own tales. They're not actually connected. They're actually just like, we want to show more in Middle Earth kind of thing. They are obviously tangential kind of connected because they're all kind of weaving into the Lord of the Rings. But it'd be great to see them kind of tell stories about what's going on around Middle Earth between the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, because that would be incredible, kind of like showing maybe the downturn in kind of Gondor and the regents and stuff like that, and you know, or you know, how the elves have decided to kind of like, you know, decide to go to the west. You know, there's a whole bunch of stories that you can tell that if you don't connect them to each other,
They could be interesting standalone kind of movies. So, would you prefer a standalone? Yeah, standalones.
No, the way I view it is exactly as you've described, things that are tangentially connected. So like a baton, like a relay race, where one isn't necessarily leading into the others, but there's a certain amount of handoff that we've brought you back to this, we've got you back into it all. Our next movie, there'll be a familiar through line of something, just a small bit of connective tissue, but this is the story we're telling. It's the same thing that I've been banging on to you about for a few years now, and you've been patient listening to me going, see, it's a galaxy far, far away. Why was everything around the Skywalker family? Mandalorian, I loved it. It started moving further away. It's the same thing. Middle-earth's a big bloody place. There's a lot of stuff happening. So I'm with you. If they decided to tell different tales, I would love it. Now, I would very much love if they were able to not have them as standalone movies with complete separate creative direction, so that there's still a feeling of the world. But story-wise, I would absolutely love it if one of them centered around Gollum and then we didn't hear of him again. I would be fine with that. If they have another, go to the Rohirrim, go to anybody and say, right, here's another story we're going to tell. Because you're already telling things in the past, let's say, for the movie viewing public. So what have you got to lose by going and telling, like you said, separate tales? I vote for you, and I think you should get on the creative team with Jackson and co.
Oh man, I'd love that. I'd just be adored. I have my obviously my Gimli axe, my Hobbit image, and also a signed photo from Gimli.
There you go. Jeez, I didn't even know all that. So yes, safe to say that we're both Lord of the Rings fans. Paul, before we run out of time, I'm just gonna check over with the comments. Lisa's apprehensive, and that's a great word. I think there's a certain apprehension to us all anytime they go back to something, particularly thanks to the Hobbits. I'll not kick too hard, but massive disappointment for me. Kim says undecided, but all about Gollum, leaning towards nay. I kind of get that, but again, I think there's apprehension there. And Brian says, I'm not a franchise dude, but these could be great. And basically, there's a new generation as an audience. Yes, and as much as us old folk have to try and remember what was Star Wars for a lot of our childhoods, would now be Lord of the Rings for a lot of younger people's childhoods now. So there is a generation that's ready to have their, oh gosh, I don't want to think of the prequels, but have their next. That analogy just killed it all for me. Now I'm just really worried. But yeah, there are people who are going to have be ready for their generation's version of the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I think there's room there. And I think with the creative team, I think it can happen, and hopefully it gently leans people towards kind of the Fellowship and obviously the Hobbit movies, to just watch the extended Hobbit movies that they make more sense. Never watch the theater released ones.
You've told me to do that. I really should get around to it. Get around to it. Okay, well, sorry, go for it.
I was going to say, so overly, I'm positive about the whole thing. I think this could be a great direction for the franchise as a whole, kind of thing. But they've messed up things in the past. So although I'm optimistic, I'm positive about it. I will not be surprised. Like when the first one comes out, that's really going to set the bar for everything else, I guess.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Positively apprehensive. I'll steal from a commentary. That's what I'll go with. Positively apprehensive, or apprehensively positive, whichever order works best for you out there. Yeah. So Paul, we don't do many of these breaking news things. We had a different plan for tonight. I kind of scuppered it with my little COVID-19 darkest timeline moment. So I want to thank you for putting up with my lack of concentration and my croaky voice. But I do want to say a big thank you to the commenters out there. Anybody who's watching in the future, please partake. Let us know in the comments whether or not you're apprehensively positive or negatively apprehensive, and what your preference would be if they're going to do more movies, to have them connected, or as Paul suggested, and I completely agree with him, maybe have some more separate tales told in the world that have just tentative links. And with that, Paul, I've been Patrick.
And I've been Paul.
And we've been Heroes Out. And we will see you next time.
Like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. See you later.
Love it. Bye.